Right now on the Daily Debrief. A teen mom accused of murdering her newborn baby is interrogated a second time. Is it an admission or are police confusing her into a confession? Plus, we're tracking two new cases. A jury is seated to hear charges that a South Carolina husband played a role in the disappearance of his mistress. And a Florida man faces the possible death penalty in the case of a 9-year-old girl stuffed in a suitcase and left floating in Tampa Bay. The Daily Debrief recaps today in court. It's Monday, September 9th.
Welcome to the Debrief, everybody. Aaron Keller, along with Michael Bryant. Our other guests will be joining us in just a moment. The state's case against an Ohio cheerleader accused of murdering her newborn baby 2 days after her high school prom surged forward today with a playing for the jury of the defendant's second police interrogation. Prosecutors say Skylar Richardson learned she was pregnant at the doctor's office, made no follow-up appointments, and did nothing to prepare for her baby's arrival. The state says she killed her child after giving birth alone at home and then happily announced multiple times that her belly was back to normal. Richardson's defense, however, says the child was stillborn and that the defendant buried it without telling anyone because she was afraid of social backlash. Richardson faces 5 charges ranging from aggravated murder at the top of the list to abuse of a corpse at the bottom. Prosecutors are going for aggravated murder under a subsection of Ohio law which allows for such a serious charge given the age of the purported victim. Here are a few key points from the second interrogation jurors heard today. Richardson said the baby's umbilical cord was wrapped around her baby's neck when it was born, that she tried to light the infant's remains on fire with a lighter, and, perhaps most damaging for the defense, that the baby was alive for, quote, maybe 5 minutes after it was born. But did she use those words, those descriptions herself, or were investigators feeding her lines to use against her at trial and she merely went along with their story? That is the big question. Listen closely to these questions and answers and notice the body language. Here, the defendant wonders if she squeezed the baby too hard and whether that caused the baby's death. The jury must decide if this is a true confession or just a scared teenager trying to explain a horrible situation.
Maybe I held her too tight. Tell me what that means.
I didn't think she was breathing. I think I squeezed her too hard.
Okay.
But it was because
I know. It's okay. It's okay. You can't. It's okay. You were trying.
I think that was killed her.
Okay. Okay.
I think I killed her. I think I killed her on purpose.
No one said, Skylar, no one believes that.
Just squeezed her.
Skylar.
I loved her.
No one believes that you would do anything to her on purpose. No one believes it. Okay?
I'm going to go
Listen to me. Okay. How long do you think you were squeezing her?
A little bit.
Okay.
A little bit.
What makes you think you squeezed her too hard? Like, what makes you think that? Looking back now. Not then, but looking back now.
Because I squeezed hard. I did, like, not so hard, but just like I just want her to go.
Okay. You think that's when she died?
Maybe.
Okay. Do you think maybe she could have been in the toilet, or?
Yeah, maybe because her spotting in April, early April, it was spotting.
Okay. Okay. But you don't have any health issues, right? You're pretty healthy. Yeah, you're 18, so okay.
And now to the damaging statements where the defendant said she used a lighter to try to burn the baby's body.
Tell me about the fire.
What fire?
Well, there's some evidence to show that there was some burning on her.
Didn't burn her? I promise on anything. I didn't burn her. My dad has lots of bonfires, but I didn't burn her.
There was some charring and stuff on some of her bones, so.
I didn't burn her.
Are you sure?
I swear on anything.
You're sure?
That I'm sure of. I'm sure of.
You didn't did you burn anything around her? Did you try to maybe melt the dirt or anything? Was there any reason for any of that?
No, and I did nothing with fire. Nothing.
Is it possible originally you put her in the fire pit before you?
No.
I don't mean with a lit fire, but you put her in the fire pit.
No.
What about, okay, maybe not fire, what about some other heat source? Was there any heat involved in anything? This has been after she was dead, so it's not like...
No.
no microwaves, no oven, no nothing. Like,
You're so close. Just give us all the truth
And
that's
I've
left.
given you all the truth. I told you about squeezing her. I think that it might have hurt her, but that I
think it's not. Did you maybe put some, like, after she was in the ground, like maybe some fire there, or
I took flowers from the fire pit.
But that wouldn't burn the bones unless they were on fire.
Not that. You're so close, Skylar. You know, just.
We know there was some sort of fire. I know it's.
And I understand that.
The entire line of questioning buried under the benevolent facade was aimed at determining whether the defendant's daughter was indeed born alive and whether a criminal act took place.
She was probably alive just a little bit.
Maybe I thought I saw her chest as I was cleaning up, and I don't know if I.
And I'm not trying to get you to say maybes or anything. Just please share the truth with us.
Why did she let a noise?
Maybe what kind of noise?
Maybe a little noise, a girl, but I didn't know if it was something else. And then I didn't hear another one.
Another one? Okay, which is natural, because that's what. I mean, again, I'm not a mom, but I've been in the delivery room for 4 of them, and there's like kind of a gurgle sound, and the doctors will suction out. You know, that's.
I didn't hear it again.
I'm sorry?
I didn't hear it again.
Okay.
Was that like when she was in the toilet, or was that when you were sleeping?
I think that it was when she was in the toilet. I might have moved, but I didn't look right away. I was like in shock. I
understand.
Yeah, a baby just fell out of you.
I saw her arm maybe a little bit moving on.
Was that also when she was in the toilet, or was that?
Yeah, I think I picked her up and over.
During cross-examination, the defense suggested that those interrogators pushed the defendant around, fed her inflammatory language, and tried to get her to go along with it.
The word cremate was used multiple times by you and Detective Carter before Skylar gave you the word back. Is that correct?
Yes, the word was used by all 3 of us, yes.
And you and Detective Carter used that theme, cremation, multiple times before she used that word. Is that correct?
No, I guess I wouldn't say used a theme. The word was used, but I'm not sure what you mean by creating a theme. I guess I don't feel like I had a theme that I was trying to create. But yes, I will agree I used that word several times, as well as Detective Carter.
When you squeezed her, that's when you think she stopped breathing. Do you remember that? And Skylar said, I didn't think she was alive before. You remember that?
Yes.
But Detective Carter is focused, and so were you, on trying to get the signs of life from Skylar. So Skylar, I said again after that, I didn't think she was breathing when she came out. Remember that?
I recall multiple times, yes, where, and it gets a little hazy because she changed her story so many times.
You guys made her start second-guessing herself. You remember that? She was second-guessing herself?
I don't recall her saying that.
You and Detective Carter refused to accept that Annabelle was dead upon delivery. Is that true?
Refused to accept that she was dead upon birth?
Yeah, you denied Skylar those statements that she'd repeatedly made, 29 plus times.
We don't refuse or accept. We're there merely as investigators. We're investigating. And again, like I said, Skylar's behavior wasn't different from so many interviews that we have. Even her parents, who've known her for 18 years, he said they have trouble telling when she's lying or not because she does so much. So we don't have that benefit. But we sit there, we try to get to the truth.
And one of these truths that you found is that the child caught fire by being touched with a lighter, and the flames went up to her chest, and there was a whole conversation about how to put that fire out. That's one of the truths that you found, is that right?
According to Skylar, yes.
The young man Richardson was dating when she gave birth to that baby testified that he helped her move her bed, perhaps to cover up the remains of blood on her bedroom floor. She also texted this young man that she was looking forward to a life with him when police started investigating the baby she buried in her backyard.
You guys got home from the game, and she goes to her house and she goes to bed. Do you know what, if anything, happens that evening, Brandon?
I do not.
Do you at that time have any idea what happens into the early morning hours of May 7th?
No.
At that time, did you have any knowledge that she gave birth to her daughter that night?
No.
At that time, did you have any knowledge that she buried her daughter in the backyard?
No.
The next time you hear from her is May 7th, is that correct?
Yeah.
And would you agree that's you saying, "Good morning, beautiful babe"?
Yes.
And she responds back, "Good morning, my amazing boy."
Yeah.
When she responded back, "Good morning, my amazing boy," at 10:42 a.m., did you know that she had just buried a baby several hours prior?
No.
You asked her how she was feeling. How do you feel, babe? That's you, correct?
Yes.
Because as far as you know, she still has her period and she still has bad cramps from her period.
Yes.
And her response to you at 11:45:11 on May 7th is, "I'll tell you all about it later, but last night was just like the worst ever, and I didn't go to sleep till 5:30. But I feel so much better this morning. I'm happy." Did you have any idea at that time what she was referring to when she said it was the worst night ever?
No.
Okay, with me tonight are forensic death examiner Joseph Scott Morgan and attorney Michael Bryant to break down some of what we just heard. Michael, it seemed to me that there was a lot of guessing in there. Maybe I squeezed the baby. Oh my gosh, is that what killed her? She's trying to come up with a possible solution as to what happened. I don't take that as a hard, fast confession. That's just me. Do I have it all wrong?
She's trying to help them. And after 9 hours, remember, she was in there 2 interviews over a total of 9 hours. The jury only got to see 5 of those hours. But they kept working her over. And they're working over somebody who is frail, who's, immature. She may have been officially an adult, but come on. This was like a little kid getting beaten up by these folks to finally say, hey, I'll tell you what you need me to tell you, because I just got to get out of here.
Or she's like trying to guess, maybe, have you thought that this is what happened? Like, oh my gosh, is this what happened?
Right.
She's trying to think through it in real time.
And the cops,
not realizing that jeopardy is attaching here. And then the cops are saying, oh, no one believes that you would do anything to her. Well, then why are they asking her questions?
And they don't ask as much as they lay the foundation for what they want her to say. I don't want to say you killed the baby, but by the way, how long was the baby alive? I mean, it's the same thing, but they're using this soft technique to just help
the hand
her.
holding, the literal hand holding.
We're so close
in the interrogation.
To getting where we need.
So close to basically charging you with the highest murder charge in the land. Joseph Scott Morgan, I want to bring you into this investigation because your expertise will help us break down some of this here. What's going on with this here? The burning. Did she burn the baby? She sort of kind of admitted to it after saying that she didn't do it, but could it ultimately result in the sort of burning that police say may have been on the bones?
Well, I'm going to keep lighters away from my heels for fear that it'll set me on fire all the way up to my rib cage, because that's essentially what they're saying. And, I don't know that they've looked through the scene for things like accelerant, something to keep a fire going. You have to really burn a body. I mean burn. They use the word cremate. That's accurate. They're going to need to maintain a constant heat source of about 800 degrees. And do you think that this young girl is capable of doing that in her backyard? I think that it's a flight of fancy on their part, and I think they're trying to get her to say something that probably didn't actually happen in the way they want it to be said.
So Joseph, bottom line here, when we use that word cremate, and by we I should say the police, the investigators, the interrogators, when they say that, you hit the nail on the head. It's got to be, what did you say, 800 degrees? Can a lighter produce a cremation in the backyard overnight in Cincinnati, Ohio?
No, you would have to have an ongoing heat source. You'd have to have an accelerant to prompt it, and then you have to have a ready supply of oxygen. And then you have to have a striking mechanism with the lighter. The lighter is just going to be the initiator. And then you have to maintain this. These bones are not rendered down to the point where you would think when you say cremation, when they're throwing around this word, this is a word not to be taken lightly. You're talking about rendering down a body. And let's keep in mind, the body is almost 80% water. So if you're going to do that, that's going to take a lot of planning. It's going to take a lot of willpower on the part of a young lady that's just given birth. She's going to have a sustainable heat source in order to facilitate this. It's fantastical to me.
Well, Joseph, you heard the word of the interrogator there. He accepted it as truth. I'm waiting for the other evidence you said we would need to make that determination. And still ahead here on the debrief, we're going to head back inside the Richardson trial with strange text messages between the defendant and her mother. Plus, a look at two new cases we're following this week, including the disappearance of a mistress where a wife is already convicted and a husband is facing his second trial. Jury selection began today in the death penalty trial of a Florida man accused of killing a 9-year-old girl. Felicia Williams disappeared in 2014 and was later found stuffed in a suitcase which was dumped off of a causeway and into Old Tampa Bay. Defendant Granville Ritchie is accused of sexually assaulting the girl, beating her and strangling her. His trial is expected to last 2 weeks. A jury, meanwhile, has been selected and opening statements are scheduled for tomorrow morning in the case of Sidney Moorer. He's the South Carolina man charged in connection with the disappearance of a woman named Heather Elvis. Moorer was having an affair with Elvis, and Elvis has been missing since December 2013, almost 6 years ago. Sidney Moorer's wife, Tammy, seen here, was convicted in a separate trial last fall of kidnapping Heather Elvis. And now back to the trial of Skylar Richardson. Prosecutors showed more text messages to the jury, many of them bizarre. These next communications were between the defendant and her mother.
3:54 p.m. from Skylar, 500 calories and 4.3 miles on the elliptical. It's amazing how much easier that was without all that extra weight. Same date, 3:55 p.m. from Kim Richardson. Yay, I got the pic. You make me so proud. Dang, that is impressive. I bet you are so fast now, though, too. Same date, 3:56 p.m. from Skylar. Probably much, much faster. LOL, I feel awesome. I don't think I've ever been able to done that on the elliptical before. Now I have to do my abs so I can lose my lower belly chub. Same date, 3:57 p.m. from Kim Richardson. You don't have any chub, but okay. 6:19 p.m. from Kim Richardson. You bossed it, PLZ, be careful, but man, you will be the hottest GF at Brandon's games. May 18th, 2017, 11:28 a.m. from Skylar. Okay, thanks. You know what's crazy? When I went to gyno on April 25th, I was 149 pounds, and today on May 18th, I weigh 119 pounds. That's literally 30 pounds gone. Same date, 11:29 a.m. from Kim Richardson. Literally amazing and crazy to do the math on that. I'm so proud you do this for you, and you are so happy now. That's all I ever want for you.
And now let's look back at key testimony from the state's forensic pathologist. This woman testified that the baby's bones did show sign of fractures, but she could not tell if the fractures happened before or after the baby died.
There are 3 fractures on both the right and the left parietal bones. So these are the same bones that we saw in the last picture, except we have now flipped them over. So we're looking at the other side, the side that would be in contact with your brain, so the inside of the bones. This is the left and the right parietal bones. We have a puncture type fracture on the left. There's a fracture right here and a fracture here. On the right, we have 1, 2, and this one is a little difficult to see.
Now, doctor, you are aware that baby Richardson's body was in the ground for over 2 months, correct?
Yes.
Are you able to offer any opinion as to whether those fractures are pre or post-mortem?
I don't know.
Okay, we have a bit of news just in here to the debrief in this case. Let's put up the screen showing the list of charges because, bottom line, the state rested late today, and in a motion to dismiss after the state's case in chief, the judge agreed with the defense that the state had not met its burden on charge number 4, tampering with evidence. That charge is now officially off the table for this particular defendant. Let's bring the panel back in here. Michael, Bryant, want to ask you, where are we procedurally, and what about this win? This is a rare win. It happens in a lot of cases, but defense attorneys rarely win it.
Oh yeah, it's pro forma. You bring in the motion to dismiss, and it basically is saying that the prosecution has not made a prima facie case of each of these different crimes, and they got it on the fourth, the tampering. That means that, and this is a matter of law, not fact, it means the court looks at it as if everything the prosecution has presented is true. And if that's all true, you still don't have a case on that charge.
I think the reason that they won it is because in order to win that charge in Ohio, you have to prove that the defendant knew that investigation was going on or that one was imminent. And they didn't prove that she was doing any of the alleged acts, assuming, again, that they were true, and said, I'm doing this to prevent detection because I believe the police are on my trail.
Yeah, I think she was naive about all of that. And never in her wildest dreams did she think she was being investigated. No, of course not.
So the state didn't have that evidence. That charge gets wiped clean as a matter of law. So this has gone from a 5-count to a 4-count case against Skylar Richardson. Let's bring Joseph Scott Morgan into things. Joseph, I didn't forget about you. We had some legal developments there. What about these forensics? We went back and listened to some of that key testimony that the state's own forensic pathologist can't say definitively that the fractures were before or after the baby died. Without that key piece of evidence, does the state even have a case on the big charges here?
I think that it would be very, very difficult, Aaron. And going back to the forensics perspective, the reality is this. These bones that are left behind are the bones of a newborn infant. They're very fragile. They're very spongy. She talked about this one puncture-like fracture that she mentioned. I think it was in the right parietal area of the skull. For all I know, and I'm going to be a little graphic here, I'm sorry, that could very well be nothing more than a wormhole. It's hard to say because newborn bone is not the same as a fully matured adult bone. There's no calcific changes. There's no ossification of the bone. It's very, very malleable. And the fact that she's talking about fractures as well, I don't know that can be determined because the skull is literally held together with a thin membrane, and after a very short period of time, that membrane gives way and the skull just kind of falls apart. It might give the indication that there was a fracture, but she didn't even look at this thing under a dissecting microscope. She admitted that in her testimony last week that she didn't have access to one.
So many questions here left open, Joseph. I mean, and you're raising all of the questions that you have, that many observers have. The big question, is this a crime of the highest degree in Ohio? It's a sad case. No one disputes that. The question is it aggravated murder? We're going to be back with more analysis here on the Debrief tomorrow at 5. Live coverage of this and other cases begins at 9 a.m.